Alright guys, so for this live code, it's really kind of a short one, but I wanted us to start thinking about how we can start refactoring things that we find useful, or code that maybe we've been using. So what I have right here is I have a helper function that we've been using. We've done something, either we're displaying on console or we're displaying on the screen, our current mouse X and mouse position so that we can find points. Okay. We could also do it, instead of doing it on the console, we could do it, or excuse me, on the canvas, we could do it on the console. So instead of seeing it here, we see it here, and it's getting updated based off of our current mouse X and mouse Y position. Okay, so either one is useful. We do have a couple problems, though, depending on which one we are using. If we are loading an image, so let me go ahead and display an image of, say, a star. I'm going to rerun my code. All right, so I have a star. Now, if I'm not paying attention to the order, I am displaying my mouse X and mouse Y position on the canvas, but it is underneath my image. Okay, if I move this down, let's say 50 pixels, there it is. Okay, so I have to think about the order. There may be times that I need to be, oops, let's not put that there. Let's put it in here. There may be times that I need to think about where I'm displaying my stuff and in what order in my draw. Okay, so this is the same thing. If I put it down to 50, I can see it, but I don't see it if I'm covering it up. Okay, which I could easily fix this just by moving the helper function below my drawing, and now it is drawn last, which means it's drawing on top of everything. Okay, I could avoid this, though, by, instead of using my helper function to display on the canvas, I could just display it in the console. So this is not an issue, regardless of what order, because I'm still updating based off of my mouse X and mouse Y position. Okay, even if I have the helper function running before the image. So there we go. The problem is if we were trying to get these points to create this complex shape from this image so that I could trace it, every time I look up what that number is, so this point right here, 156, 138, as soon as I come to my code to try to write it, I'm losing it. I'm losing that reference. So I think it would actually be better for us to refactor by making it so that when we click, or maybe we hit the P key, we can start capturing each one of those points, and then we can use that to build our stuff a lot faster. Okay, so that means that we actually don't want the helper function to be firing in the draw, because that happens 60 times a second. That's why everything is updating really fast. Doesn't matter which one we're using, it's updating 60 times a second. That's causing us issues. Okay. So let's move this here. It doesn't matter which one. It's updating too fast for us to be able to get those points. I want to be able to just map it. So instead of having this inside the draw where this is running 60 times a second, we want to make it event-based. Event-based would be, if we look in the references, and we look at events, these are event-based. Okay, so we got mouse options, we got keyboard options. If you're using a cell phone, you could build it for this too. So touch movements, accelerometers, rotation. Most of the time we're going to play around with keyboard and mouse, as that is what you would do for a desktop computer. Okay, so we want to make this event-based. So if I just say use the mouse press right here, this mouse function, that happens when I press the mouse. So if I create a function called mouse pressed and instead call my helper function there, this is no longer firing in the draw. Okay, this is now event-based. If I click on the mouse, I get a point I see on the console. I did not see a point, though, up here. Now, why is that? That is because we are clearing the screen with the background in our draw and then drawing an image. So it did display, but in that 60 times a second, it quickly drew over it. So I can capture multiple points. I definitely see them here. I don't see them here. So just moving this and making this event-based already gives us a lot of what we would need, because we could just basically go, I could, click on these points. Point, 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 and then there's my last one, which would be my first one. Okay. So there we go. That would be all the points that we would need to start building a star. Okay, so if we wanted to create a star function, I could just use those. Function draw star. I'm going to have how many points? Well, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I could close it. So if I did begin shape, end shape, and in here we said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to use multi-cursor select, vertex. There we go. Now all we got to do is just start putting those points in, so I can just start at the top and start matching those points. Okay. What I would do, even if I was doing curves, is start with the points first. Get the points down and then bend them afterward. 137, 273, 140, 220, 182, 236, 251. I'm going to quickly copy these in. 177, 210, 122, 247, and 142, 185. I guess my number must have been off. Copy that twice. '87, 142, and then this would be our last one, okay, which we could either keep on there, I'll show you, 155 and 140. Okay, I'll keep that on there. Let's draw. So let's comment out our image. Let's see what that draw star looks like. There's a star, okay? If we wanted to see it on top of our image, not too bad, okay? I could individually tweak those points, and we would be good. Now, if I didn't want to do this last point right here, then I could actually say close, and sometimes there are benefits for that. It's still doing the same thing. It's just going to pick the last point. If I wanted to do any types of curves for any of these, all I got to do is look at what is the vertex right after where I want the curve to happen, and then that's what I'm going to do. So here may not be the curve that I want, but we could play around with this. So maybe this, if I wanted to put a curve here or here, then I'm using one of the vertex points that I use to map out, which isn't too bad to use. Now I can also, with my draw star, maybe put no fill. There's no fill. No, it would be easier if I don't have the image there. That's no fill. I can also play around with the stroke. So we could say that we want that stroke to be black. We want that stroke to be much fatter. There's a fatter stroke. 8. Okay. And we could tweak this as much as we want, but using this, being able to get those points, much easier trying to just be able to click. All we have to do is think about how we need to use it. So copying these points down would be pretty quick. If I wanted to, pull up an image and I'm trying to trace something, all all I have to do is any change in direction, capture that as a vertex. If I wanted to switch something from a vertex to a quadratic vertex, I'm just rewriting that and then adding the control point right before that point. So then we're good. This should be pretty quick. Okay, so that is just how we can quickly refactor and figure out how to draw something else by changing our helper function. Instead of making it dynamically drawn 60 times a second, we make it event-based, and we can capture those points. We could additionally do it a little bit different, but since it is event-based, we are fine. But let me show a quick refactor, because you might end up doing this on other functions. Maybe your function you want to run, but only off of specific points. If you got to the stamp function, this is one of the things that we kind of talked about. I could pass in the mouse X and mouse Y there, and then in my helper function, whatever that X and Y is, these are my requirements for my function, and instead of doing mouse X there, I can do, say, whatever that parameter is. This X would get here, so whatever is put in when this is called will get displayed on the text, and will get displayed. Okay. Now, again, the helper function, it still would matter on the order that it's drawn for me to be able to see it. So here, if I'm running this helper function, again, I'm only seeing on the console, but if I wanted to see it on my canvas, then the background is not going to be drawn right away. So that might be something where you're drawing the background in the setup so it doesn't fire all the time, and then I see it. But that looks kind of funny. Part of that is because the draw star, I changed the stroke. So if we wanted that to not be affected by anything else, we could put a push and a pop. Kind of getting off topic a little bit. There's my point. However, every time I click, it's going to write right on it because it's not clearing the screen. But I do see a nice, awesome list right here. I can highlight and copy and paste if I wanted to do that, and then just add vertex to all of them, and that's super easy. So we could, instead of thinking that we have to do the background and all kinds of other crazy stuff, we could use the console to our advantage. It is useful to use the console. Okay, and it's just console.log. I don't necessarily see it on here, but I can get all these points. I could copy all of them. I could draw some other weird shape. Weird shape. Paste all of those, and then do multi-cursor select, and add those all as vertexes. Vertex. Go to the end. Let's tidy that code. And then we can put a begin shape and an end shape. So you can be able to create some really organic stuff. Weird shape. Let's comment that one out, and we'll just do a weird shape. There you go. That's basically what we drew. Was all those random points. We were able to copy them from the console really quickly, and we were able to draw them. Okay? So that's the idea, using, rewriting certain pieces of code that you have found useful over multiple projects to make it even more useful. Okay? Don't be afraid to change stuff to better fit your needs. All right? Okay, so now that we've done with mouse press, let's quickly check and see what we could do with, let's put that star back up there. Let's quickly look at what we could do with, instead of mouse press, maybe I want to do key press, okay? Which could be the exact same thing if I wanted to tie this to a key instead of with the mouse. I can also still call the helper function any way that I want, okay? Now, let me comment this out. Now, if I am pressing the mouse, see it's no longer firing, but any key on the keyboard will make it fire. Any key. Okay? So, hitting a bunch of keys, it's going to make it fire. But maybe I actually only want that to fire certain cases. So maybe I'm building a game and I need to just quickly double check some stuff. I might end up putting this where maybe I only want a point when I hit the P key. Okay, so if we look here, we can say if, and we're going to want to write some conditional. So just doing in pseudocode, if P key is pressed, then what do I want? Then we want to run the helper function. Run helper function. Okay, so now we got to quickly build this in. So if P key is pressed, then run the helper function. So let's look at that. Let's go into the key pressed. Okay, so we're going to go here. We're looking at key pressed. Okay, key pressed function is called once every time a key is pressed. The key code for the key that was pressed is stored in the key code variable. Okay, so that's a variable that is already built in. Now they do have different ways to check for non-ASCII type keys like backspace, delete, enter, return, tab, escape, all of these. For ASCII keys, the key that was pressed is stored in the key variable. However, it does not distinguish between uppercase and lowercase. If we wanted to do something with capitals, then we would use key typed. Okay, so let's look. So on here, if key is pressed, if the value is 0, the color value right here, then it's changing it to 255. Otherwise, it's changing it to 0. So if I press any key, it's flipping it back and forth. If I look here, here we have key code. We're checking if it equals. Notice it has 3 equals. If it equals the left arrow, then we're changing it. Otherwise, we're doing the right arrow and we're changing it. So left, right, left, right, left, right. Let's keep going. I think we need to look at what that key code is. So we're going to click on this and look in here. Okay. Now, we already read that it does some stuff. You can also check for custom keys by looking up the key code of any key on a site like this. So I'm just going to click on this. There's a number of ways that we can get to this. And this is just, I could just type in key code. But we were talking about the P key. The P key is 80. I just clicked P on the keyboard and it pops up. Okay, it lets me know what key and it gives me what number that is. This is what is stored under the key code. Okay, so if I push the P key, it's showing up 80. If I press the A key, it's showing up 65. Space bar, 32. Enter key, 13. Now I can actually type all in caps like what we did, or I can actually still look up the key code. Okay, so using something like this, you can double check all these values. Now if I'm holding Shift and A, or regular A, notice how it's the same thing. Okay, that's because it's not differentiating between a capital or a lowercase. Okay, so we're looking for the P key, that is 80. Let's put that in there. So we want if the P key is pressed, then run the helper function. So to build this out, if key code equals 80. If that is true, then we are executing what is in this code block, which we want it to be the helper function. Okay, I'm going to show with possible errors though. Okay, so if I'm moving my mouse to a point and I find that when I'm clicking, I'm moving it just a little bit with my mouse, then I might want to have where I'm just focusing and typing the P key. P. I'm just pressing P. Every time the P key is pressed, I get in that conditional and I am running that helper function. There we go. There it is. Super easy to use. Now, here's a couple of issues when we're doing a conditional. Watch this. I press a semicolon in between here. This means that I am not running my conditional with all 3 parts. An if, a question, and then a code block. I broke it up and said that this is all complete. Okay? Which means I'm asking a question, but I'm not tying it to anything. Which means that now, when I press the P key on my canvas, I'm getting points, but I could press the space bar, and I'm getting points. D key, A key, S key, any of these, I'm getting points. Because this right here is treated as independent. This code block will run every time the key is pressed, not when just the 80 key is pressed. Okay? So I have to take off that semicolon so it's complete. Now, normally for readability, when we're running this, the beginning of the code block is tied with the if statement, and we finish off the code block so that it's in line with the end of the conditional. Okay, so anything inside of the open and closing brackets of a code block will be run as long as this is true. So if it's not true, then it will not run it. Okay, now if I don't put this in a code block and I leave it like this, now any key I press will still fire, not just the P key, okay, because it's not inside the code block. Conversely, we could have issues if you're not using a code block. Where does the program know to stop? If you wanted this to happen, so let me press the P key. It gave me the point. Let me press the space bar. That one worked. Usually it will do one line, but it doesn't know how much to do. So if I did, I'm going to comment out the background and I'm going to draw that weird shape. Let's tidy that code. Okay, so I want this to run. I want this to run. Okay, I'm pressing the P key. It did happen to run that time. It doesn't always. Okay, and you will start getting weird things happening if you're not properly blocking your code. There are different languages that are indentation based. JavaScript likes to try to fail successfully, so you need to be careful with it. Usually on an if statement, it will only read the first block. In Java, it will not read the other ones, but it won't throw an error, so you won't know what is going on. Well, let's see if we put a space in there for readability. That still happened to run it. Let's see if we can put a draw star. It will not drop there. I see nothing. Oh, when I press the enter key, it's still happening. Man, that's weird. But I see no point right there. So, P gave me the point, right? And it still drew the weird shape and the draw star. So, it's not really firing it, it's only firing these. Now, let's take off that space. I press the enter key. It still gave me that, it just didn't give me that helper function. It drew the star and it drew that weird shape, but it did not give me this. So it only really tied that first one. If I go to tidy code, that's part of the reason why it puts it on the same line, because these are not part of that conditional. An easy way, though, to make sure that it always works is use a code block. Okay, it's an easy thing to do. Put everything in there that you want to run, and then you know that it will run. I'm pressing all the keys, nothing happens. I press the P key. It drew the weird shape, it drew the star, it gave me the coordinates. Okay, that is what I want. That's why we use the code blocks. Okay, make sure you guys are using those. That will cause you a lot less heartache in between conditionals, because then your code will fire regardless, because you are not tying this code block to be run with the conditional. They are all part of the same thing. 3 parts. The keyword to let us know it's a conditional, the question, and the code block. Okay? All right, that's it. That's for everything. We went over key presses, we went over mouse presses, we went over refactoring, a helper function, something that we're using. We went over how to do it better with the console to be able to easily copy points, to be able to draw stuff much faster. That's it for this live code session. Good luck. Have fun.